Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Mind Bloom, the safe space at the intersection of mental health advocacy and breast cancer awareness. Mind Bloom is your podcast. Subscribe to hear more on female entrepreneurship and the juggling of family life, career goals, and romantic relationships. Not an easy task, especially if your physical and mental health need a big hug right now. Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Marina Gee, your host, and welcome to Mind Bloom, the podcast for all things mental health and breast cancer awareness. Before we dive into this week's episode, let me just say that Mind Bloom, the podcast, and the content at Mind Bloom U across all platforms is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always contact your providers for medical counsel. Never disregard any medical treatment or delay seeking professional help because of any content authored or distributed by Mind Bloom. Hi guys, thank you for tuning in. It's another beautiful fall day here in Brooklyn, New York City. I am excited for fall. It's my favorite season. I don't know about you, but it's the season of my birthday. My birthday is next month in October, and I like to celebrate that day, and I like all the attention I get, and I don't like to become older. No, I don't like that part. But I do like the celebration, and I mean, we should be thankful and grateful and very, very happy that we have, another day, another year on this planet. I'm really excited that you're on the other side of the line. Anywhere you are in the world, you're so welcome. If you're just tuning in, Mind Bloom is a podcast on mental health and breast cancer awareness. I try to keep the two together as much as possible. From my very personal perspective, one does not go without the other. But of course, you can think differently. Regardless, you will hear tons of tips and suggestions and things I do and things I do not do to take care of my mental health and to take care and make sure we keep the breast cancer abreast. I like a good pun. I think you know this by now. I want to thank you all for following Mind Bloom on Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook. You can find Mind Bloom at Mind Bloom U. Also, thank you so much for the reviews and the 5-star ratings and the beautiful words you leave there. I should be able to read 1 or 2 more reviews next week. Thank you for visiting Mind Bloom website. It's mindbloomu.com, and you can always drop me a line at info@mindbloomu.com. So basically just do Mind Bloom U everywhere on the internet, and in one way or another you will find me. Now, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but it's funny because last week I was asking you all, my listeners, to ask your parents, your siblings, your neighbors to follow Mind Bloom on Instagram and Twitter and all the other social media platforms, but mostly on Instagram because I was trying to make it to 1,000 followers. And funny enough, after Tuesday, I got a little bump on my following on Instagram. So I don't know. I wonder if it's people who are just coming across Mind Bloom for the first time. They listen to my plea And they so gently and so kindly went on Instagram and followed Mind Bloom. So if that is the case, and if you are one of those sweet, sweet people, thank you. Thank you so much. I know a bunch of you I followed back. So I'm very excited to stay in touch and see what you are up to as well. Nevertheless, Mind Bloom is still not at 1,000 followers, so let's do another push. Last week, you may have asked your parents. Well, this week, ask your step-parents, ask your stepchildren, ask your mother-in-law and your sister-in-law, your brother-in-law, all the in-laws. Please ask your dentist if they would like to follow Mind Bloom on Instagram. Let's see, your chiropractor, your therapist, your yoga teacher, your priest, just anyone. Just put big signs out your door saying, guys, follow Mind Bloom on Instagram because that woman wants to reach 1,000 followers already. So I don't know if you guys know, but for the last maybe 2 weeks, I have been starting and growing a sourdough starter. And before you roll your eyes at me and start thinking, oh my God, she went crazy with this whole pandemic fad of making bread at home, like, why don't you just go and buy the loaf already? Right, I get it. I hear you. I thought the same thing as well. But now I changed my mind because minds can be changed. So I listened to a friend's advice and I started my little experiment with flour and water. I mean, how complicated can it be? So I thought I'd give it a try. The first little batch of sourdough starter that I started, I tossed it after maybe 6 days. I wasn't really happy with the smell. I didn't really like it. I also didn't know what it looked or smelled or felt like. So this is kind of a guessing game. But regardless, my intuition was telling me no. So I tossed it, I started over, and this one is looking pretty good. So this one turned a week on Saturday, and they say, give it between 6, 7, 8 days for the sourdough starter to be strong enough for you to bake bread. At which point, today being Monday, I am finally working on my first sourdough bread. Basically, you grab a little offshoot of the sourdough starter, which you keep, forever and ever. Basically, it's your little pet. So now I have a dog, have a bunch of plants that I rescue from the street, and I have a sourdough starter that I have to feed every day or every week if I keep it in the fridge. Otherwise, it'll die. So we don't want that to happen. So yes, I guess I will have to feed it until the end of eternity. So the first bread, the first loaf of sourdough that I'll be making. I started this morning. You get the little offshoot of the sourdough starter, and then, you also at some point you'll mix it with more flour and more water and a pinch of salt. And then you mix it, and then it sits and rests on your counter, on your kitchen counter. And then you go and knead some more and toss it around some more. And then it rests and sits and waits on your counter. And as time goes by, this fermentation process starts growing and bubbling and creating these air bubbles that are really cute and cool, and it's a very instant gratification process because you instantly see what your hands are producing and your hands are creating, and the result of your work, of your kneading and of your waiting. There's a lot of waiting involved, so much so that this dough will only be baked into a bread tomorrow, maybe And I think I get it now why the whole craziness around sourdough bread baking was such a thing in the beginning of the pandemic. I don't know so much about now, but I get it because it is a very meditative process. It's a process that involves, like I was saying, a lot of waiting time, and in the meantime seeing something grow and flourish and become this beautiful product that you can eat, that'll nourish you and your family. But it started 24, 48 hours before on your kitchen counter as flour and water and the starter that you started weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. So it's a very magical process. It's a little bit like gardening, and for me as well, having a dog or having my plants. It's this idea of planting the seed, letting it rest, letting it do its thing, and fermenting and growing and blooming really when it's in the oven. And then you have a bread for breakfast. Funny enough as well is the fact that when I mentioned blooming, that the bread is blooming in the oven, I wasn't using the term metaphorically, or I wasn't just doing a little pun like the ones I want. It's for real the term that is used when bread is in the oven cooking, baking, and it blooms. So it opens up in the oven, following, give or take, the shape of the scoring, so the shape of the cutting of the bread. Wherever you cut the dough prior to going into the oven, that's the shape it'll assume once cooked, and that is the blooming. That's what bakers call the blooming. So because of Mind Bloom, this friend approached me and said, you really, I mean, if you love plants and if you love animals, you should try and tinker with sourdough, with wild yeast, just the magnificent things it can make, or that you together can make. And as I was kneading, even before the kneading, it's a very precise process. So you use a little kitchen scale and you have to measure your ingredients for the right and the exact quantities. A good thing too is that this baker whose recipes I'm following uses the metric system. Yay! So I feel completely at home with the measuring process for once in this country. And then you have to involve the water with the flour, and you have to integrate all the ingredients and keep them at the right hydration level and the right temperature as well. I got a little thermometer to measure the temperature. So I'm completely geeking out here on flour and water. Do you have a problem with that? I'm just gonna do this, I guess, for the next few weeks, so bear with me. But I was saying, as I was doing all of these steps, it could be from 30 minutes to 45 minutes, to just follow the process of following all these little steps of the recipe. I was thinking that I was feeling quite at home with this, and not just because I am physically at home in my apartment in Brooklyn, but because it's a comforting process and it's such a nurturing process that you can't help but feel at home and feel safe and comfortable. Let me try to clarify what I'm trying to say. So let's say you're like me and you're living in a different country, you're living in a different continent actually, and even though, the cultural shock is not tremendous, there are a few essential differences, namely in, language for one, and then the cost of living, the cost of healthcare. There's so many differences as well in how you approach life and how you approach your professional life as well. I mean, there's differences in the way you cook, there's differences in the ingredients you buy. So again, it's not a huge shock because You grow up watching American movies, but once you start exploring life as an immigrant here, then, subtle and nuanced differences will occur every single day, I think. So imagine this is happening for the last 7 years to you, and your immigration status is a little bit unsolved still. And this frustrates you a little bit because you have the highest degree in education that anyone can have, a doctorate degree. You speak a bazillion of languages. You are highly skilled, highly motivated, and very entrepreneurial. So this is already not so simple. And then there's this added layer where, because of your immigration status being ever so slightly up in the air every single day of your life as an immigrant, you start creating this defense mechanism where nothing is stable, right, in your life. So you search for stability, but then you're scared of achieving that stability because you know you may have to leave soon enough. So you run away from that stability, but you are searching for stability because that's what humans want in general and normally. So, and you find yourself in this catch-22 that is just unending. The biggest example I can give you of stability that I search for is the search for a home, for a place I can call my home. That's why I love my plants and my dog and my kitchen supplies, my flour and olive oil and my basil and garlic and tomatoes and, just being around these things that grow and you can see grow and see prosper. But if you're an immigrant, I think stability becomes a luxury. It's something you can't afford. You can't afford it for a day, for a week, for a month. You're stable. Even a year. Hey, sure, you can even feel stable for a whole year. But you have this fear very, very deeply rooted that you may, and I'm going to use the same word again, you may be uprooted so momentarily that it impacts your friendships, your connections, and your relationships, and it impacts your work. And I felt this pressure on a daily basis when I was working 9 to 5. You can't really focus much if you know that maybe next month you may not be here. And it affects your most minute decisions. I look at my plants on a daily basis and I know I look at them and I see that they will not come with me. And then I look at my TV or I look at my furniture around my room and I know for a fact these things would not come with me. And then I look at my kitchen appliances and my little whisk for the batter and my kitchen scale and my kitchen thermometer and my, just the little things and my mason jars for the starter, for the sourdough starter. And I know, or at least I wonder, that these may not come with me. I look at the thermometer and think, oh my God, okay, so maybe we can do this. The thermometer weighs literally 3 grams. I can bring this with me, sure. But I'm constantly running these decisions in my head. Constantly. And this question, I ask this question in my head multiple times a day. In a pinch, what would you bring with you? I know I would bring Bianca with me, but would I bring, let's say, my clothes? Would I bring my shoes? What am I going to do with the little makeup I have? And I would invite you to do this exercise. Just look around your place and think, what would you bring with you if you had to go, if you had to leave? And I say in a pinch, but I know I don't have to leave in a pinch ever. But if you're here for 7 years, everything sounds and feels like a pinch. Every decision, every moment you think you may have to go, it's always too soon. These questions and these thoughts cross my mind practically, every waking hour of my day. Yes, for the last 7 years. So talking about mental health is something that makes a lot of sense to me, because talk about a trigger for anxiety and just feeling vulnerable and insecure, unsafe, and second guessing yourself more than being an immigrant. So as I was kneading my bread dough earlier today, I was thinking of what the meaning of home may be, and I noticed that home can be any little nook where you can stretch and knead your sourdough dough, and anywhere you can fit your little furry friend. Or, I'm sure there's other towns and other places where people abandon their plants and their flowers in the curbside, and so I'll still be able to pick them up and bring them home with me. And so I shouldn't be scared of trading this home for another one somewhere else. And I should be able to realize that the whatever stability I've been able to find and garner in this country will come with me. I will bring it with me in a suitcase to wherever I go next. So I was feeling comforted with that idea, but at the same time I stomped my foot for a minute and I said to myself, no, but this is the home I want to stay in. It doesn't have to be this specific apartment, but it's this neighborhood, it's this church, it's this city that went through hell and back from March on. It's this city that's given me all the grit and then some to conquer and win and pursue and keep trying, keep banging the head on the wall, but keep trying, keep failing, keep getting up, keep trying. So yes, it is good to know that the core of the things that make me comfortable, that make me be me, will come with me wherever I go. But I want to be a little bit like Arya in Game of Thrones and say, not today. Not today, though. I choose to stick around. I choose to make New York City my town for, another 7 years. I choose to bake my bread here with the enzymes and the pollution and just all the nice bacteria of New York City, because this is what I'm calling home. And it's going to take a whole lot of pushback from immigration to send me elsewhere. Because this one knows what it feels to be tested and challenged and pushed to my limits and come back on the other side, just brushing off the dust and going at it again. It's not for no reason that I have a New York Yankees cap. And if you don't like that, and if you don't like that I call New York my home, then you can go bloom yourself elsewhere. This week, my guest is Sammi Reyes. Sammi is a second-year college student, motivational speaker, and the host of the Fashion Your Passion podcast. Through her own life experiences, Sammi has learned so much about how a person can reach the next level of their life and how they can find time to pursue the things they love. Today, Sammi speaks to many high schoolers and college students across the country and reaches a global audience through her podcast to spread that message. I am so happy and so proud to have Sammi speaking with me this week. She is the first Generation Z-er that I have on Mindbloom, and I am so happy to be giving a voice to this younger generation. Mental health is, yes, a major concern in this age break, and especially now with schools closing, universities, colleges, and isolation proliferating around the country. So you are going to be very happy to hear what Sammi has to say about teenage and early adult depression and anxiety and mental health, and positively surprised with the work she has been doing and will be doing, I'm pretty sure, throughout her life. So stick around to hear what Sammi Reyes has to say right after this. Guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Turns out it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. It will also distribute your podcast for you so that everyone can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast and many, many more. And guess what? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. So, Sammi, tell me, what makes your mind bloom?
Yeah, so when I first heard this question, I really just what came to mind at first was really just what excites me the most, and what really, sort of drags me out of bed every day. And of course, that's the one thing that I focus on is, passion and something that, sort of like makes you hop out of bed every single morning. But I think that the one thing in general that really makes my mind bloom is really just at least for right now, in the time we're in right now, is the capacity to which social media can really allow you to spread knowledge and research on many different topics. I think, whether it's just like cancer awareness or it's mental health awareness or, just like minority awareness, whatever it is, like I feel like right now, especially Instagram is so hot with all these different graphics, all these different posts on different information about different people who we may have never even heard about.
I agree. I am so positively surprised with social media. I used to have my just personal account and, I'd follow J-Lo and Jennifer Aniston, my girls. And that was fun. But I was like, I really, I don't really get what all the buzz is about. And now I do.
Yeah.
I really, and you say the same. I really am starting to belong to this community of people who want to raise awareness for this and that and want to expose just bad things and want to be an ally for the good things, at least for the things, the causes we believe are good. And wow, it's amazing. Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad we share that interest. Yeah. So you're a millennial, I guess we can say that, right? And you're a fellow podcaster and you're an advocate for mental health. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you do all of this at such an early age. I'm so proud. It's unbelievable. So tell me a little bit more about you, Sammi Reyes, and what's going on. What is this all about?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I'm sort of right after the millennial age, but in my soul, I'm more of an old soul. So I do feel like a millennial. So you're right on track with that one. But I think for me, really all of my life, I've been very multi-passionate, which means basically I have a lot of passions, But with that, I can combine them all into one thing or two things that really I can pursue. So currently it's like I run Fashion Your Passion podcast. I go out and speak across the country to different high schools about, mindset, creating your dream life, finding your passion. I have a bunch of social media marketing clients, where I run their social medias for them. I, work at a podcast PR agency and help clients, find podcast guests and have podcast, people come on. And then I'm also a college student, I'm, majoring in a mix of journalism, counseling, and psychology. And I think that for me, it's just so much fun because I personally don't like to do one thing for long periods of time. I like to dabble around in little different things. So it's great because in the morning I go to school, I learn about journalism and counseling or whatever. Then after school I go over to the PR agency and I work on clients there. Then after that I go back to my own office, and I work on social media marketing, social media planning for my other clients. And then I'll record a podcast here and there and work on my own marketing stuff like that. So I think it's I think I was talking to someone yesterday on a different podcast, and I think the one thing that I've learned is that if everything that I'm doing, no matter how many things it is, if I love it, I can do all of them at the same time, and I think that it's just so important to start to integrate more things into your day, your week, your month, whatever it is that you fall in love with. For me, I knew I loved to talk. I knew I loved to, hear other people's stories as well. So I started speaking, I started podcasting, and that's something that gets me out of bed every single morning, Even though I don't, have a podcast interview every single day, I know that someone out there is listening to some episode of the podcast, or someone out there, is prepping for our interview or whatever it is. I think that's something that, allows me to do everything that I'm doing.
Yeah. And it's the beautiful thing of this gig economy, I think, is that we are doing it out of passion and love versus the grind of the 9 to 5, going to work every day to work for someone else and for an ideal that is not ours. Because before the pandemic, I had a 9 to 5. So, yeah. So what drew you specifically to mental health and the youth, I guess? Is that even a word anymore? Does that date me as an old person? Why mental health and this community in particular?
Yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned before, part of my major in school is counseling and school psychology, and just run regular psychology in general, with an emphasis on abnormal psych, which is, mental health, mental illnesses, all those fun stuff like that. And I mean, for me personally, what it's been, I've had my own slew of mental health things. I've had, I'm continuing on my mental health journey, but I think that I've always been sort of a big giver. From the age of 9, I wanted to be a teacher, and I knew that I wanted to be a teacher because my great-grandmother was a teacher and my mom was a teacher, and my teachers just literally, they every single year just saved my life in one way or another. And I knew that if I wanted to, if I wanted to be that person. And so I was like, okay, great. I can, I know how to teach. Like I taught, like I tutored kids in middle school and high school, whatever. I was like, this is perfect. And then a few years ago, it was the middle of middle school, I started to feel off and I didn't know what was up. I had taken a mental health week, I called it, from track, and I just came home every single day, sat on the couch, watched television until 8 p.m. from 3 to 8, and then started my homework at 8 p.m. and a scramble to get it done for the next day. And I knew this wasn't like me because in the years previous, I would get an assignment. First thing I would do is finish it, and then I'd be done. I wouldn't have any homework, for the rest of the day. So I knew this is different. And I sort of went with that feeling for about 2 years. I just let it happen. I just tried to figure out, what I just needed to do to get by. It was really just survival mode I was set in. And in high school, I got into high school, and it was sort of the same thing. I remember freshman year, I told one of my teachers, I was like, I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know how to get my head above water. And it just I just had to figure it all out. I didn't know what was up with me. And then in 10th grade, my lovely, lovely English teacher, Mrs. Stewart, she assigned us a project where we had to sort of come up with a question based off of the literature we had read throughout the year, and find an answer to that question. So we had read One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it's all about this guy who gets admitted into a psych ward and his experience in the psych ward. And so I decided to, have that as my key piece of literature. And I asked the question of why do teens suffer with mental illness? How does it affect their, kids' community and stuff like that? And what can we do to sort of, redraw the line to what we know about and the stigma of what we know about? And that sort of meshed, my own personal curiosities about my own life with my giving hand. And in that research, I found out sort of what was wrong with me, and also I found out a bunch of, sort of the different things that are put on teens or put on young kids that may impact their mental health. And sort of from there, I just ran with it, and I realized, I think, in the past, 3-4 months, I realized how important my own mental health story was. And I knew I needed to sort of speak about it more. And so a lot of the podcasts that I've been on currently have been about my mental health journey more than, different topics I can speak on, like passion and dream life and stuff like that, because what really started this all, the whole speaking and podcast thing was in senior year, it was still the same. I still was feeling super anxious. I was still feeling super, super sad. Mm-hmm. And one day my public speaking teacher, it was because she was my last teacher of the day. One day I went to her and I was like, I'm so scared to attend this, whatever event it was. Cause I think, because there's a huge trigger for me there. And she was like, Sammi, like, how do we, sort of eliminate or like minimize those triggers? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I've been living with this for so long. Like, I didn't know what to do. And she told me, she was like, I want to be able to help you. We need to figure out a plan on how we can sort of minimize these triggers and how you can sort of live your life a little bit better. And from there, it sounds so like cliche, but from there, like my life just went, complete 180. And everything just sort of in an instant, just like got put together. And yes, it's been a battle since then. And I'm still, sort of figuring everything out, but it's been so much better since then. And I think that also that little piece of me where, one of my teachers pretty much saved my life, and she's been a mentor since then, for the past 2 years and a half now. And I think that was the moment where I was like, I just need to share what I've learned with the world. I need to share this because if no one else is going to, and, having a teen's perspective to other teens, like that's something special. That's not what you hear every day. And I was also listening to podcasts like Rachel Hollis and Ed Milet and Lewis Howes. And I was like, no one else my age listens to this stuff. And if I can understand it and listen to it and then take it and rewire it, that way other teens can understand it too. That's gold. Like that is what I need to do. And so I told my public speaking teacher, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And she's like, you need to go for it and just don't stop. And I was like, okay, fine. And from there, like I've just been, a mix of so many different things that I've been pursuing, but all in the idea to help teens sort of not suffer in the way that I've suffered.
That's so interesting. And I was listening to your podcast in one of the episodes the other day, and the guest was saying that it's around 14 years old that people may start developing mental illness of one sort or other. And she was saying about 80% of the teens will go undiagnosed, maybe forever, or at least until they're adults and it's struggling immensely with their mental health. And I think you were one of those cases. You started feeling around maybe 14, I'm going to guess, something was not working right. But luckily, I don't know if you were diagnosed or like formally diagnosed, but you had this help, you had this nudge and this incentive from your mentors, your teachers in this case, to say, okay, maybe let's work some things out. Let's try some strategies. Maybe they even said, would you like to look for professional help? I don't know. So it's a blessing that you had those two teachers in your life. And that now you are stepping into that role of a mentor and you're teaching and instructing and showing others that it's okay. It is a bumpy road And it may be a road that will, never end really, the one of anxiety and just struggling with intrusive thoughts and second guessing and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a long road, but it's one that you will learn to manage as you go with help. Nothing, and I don't know if you agree with me, but nothing about mental health goes without help of others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole journey for me started when I was 12. And then I think I was diagnosed when I was 16, I want to say. And that's really when I started going to therapy then, because I realized like there just isn't that much that people in my life can do for me. Like they were helping me immensely, but it was just like the same routine over and over again. Like I would come to them with my problem and they'd try to fix it. And it was just over and over. I was like, I just need something more than this. So I started therapy when I was 16. And luckily my aunt, who's also a therapist, she like sort of knew how the whole thing worked. So she found someone for me. And I've been with this therapist literally ever since, which is great. So the past like 3 years on and off. And so, yeah, I literally 4 years didn't know what was going on with me, didn't know, what was happening. And then luckily, finally, I got professional help first and got diagnosed first. And then my teachers, dove in and helped me a lot. So I'm forever grateful for them.
It's beautiful. And now you can help others. It's unbelievable. It's so, so good. So you would say those two teachers are your mentors? Would you say that? Do you have any others, or how does that go in your...
Yeah. So it's so funny because all my entire life, I've always been like, I call myself like friends with my teachers, like every single year I was sort of the teacher's pet. Like everyone knew me as that. I always, I always got along better with the teacher than the kids in my class. But I think in high school, really what happened in high school was I felt how do I word it? I think in high school what happened was I realized that I was an old soul. I realized that I was, 17 going on 35. And so I sort of, just started talking to my teachers more. I was like, you guys are, sort of the age where my brain is at, and we can have civil and engaging conversations. And, some conversations I can't even have with my friends because we're not on the same wavelength. And yes, a lot of my friends are old souls too. And, a lot of my friends now at least, but back then, in the beginning of high school, it wasn't that case. And so I think that over the years, there have been a few teachers who have stuck by my side. There have been a few who really just, get me and I get them, and they've helped me and I've helped them in various different things. And I think that for me, I consider people a mentor, who really help me with what I'm doing, so I have sort of my spiritual mentor, who is my old English teacher, that I have, sort of like my Instagram mentor, who is the one who, composed the project for us in 10th grade. And then, I call her my life mentor, which was my public speaking teacher. And, whoever knows me on social media, knows I literally talk about her 24/7 because she was a woman who pretty much changed my life. And to this day, she's been helping me with podcast stuff and book stuff and everything, up the wazoo, and, and life stuff in general. And I've been helping her, with the same thing. And so, we're pretty much, I'll say we're friends at this point. But I think that, just finding someone, whether it's, an older and it's an older student or it's a teacher, I think the most important thing about mentors is people who, sort of have know where you've been and can help you to get to the next place to where you want to go.
What would you say to the people at home in terms of the work you do, and in terms of maybe they're struggling, maybe they're finding that things are a little bit off, especially now during the pandemic and social isolation, maybe job loss? I don't want to say advice, but what tips would you have for the people listening?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that one of the biggest things that I want to say is that it's not going to be easy. And I feel like every time I tell my story, it sounds like it was just, a one and done deal and it was so easy to get through. But it really wasn't. There were a lot of tears. There was so much pain. There was so much, figuring out what the heck I'm going to do. Even to this day, last year I had to move cross country to go to school, and I didn't have the resources that I had here, and sort of figuring that out was painful and it hurt, and just all this stuff, like, and even right now, like, we are packing up my childhood home and my whole family is moving over to California. Mm-hmm. And this is the most pain I think I've ever been in my entire life, because I didn't think I'd have to leave my childhood home that fast. And so I think that things seem easy in retrospect, but really it's painful and it hurts. And I just want to acknowledge that, first of all. My best sort of piece of advice would be to just do one thing every single day. It's hard to get out of bed, but just go to the bathroom and wash your face. It's hard to take a shower, then wash your hair in the sink or whatever you need to do. It's hard to eat something and have the littlest of something to eat and see if you're hungry and continue to eat. I'm not asking you to get on your whole to-do list and, take a shower and get ready in the same day. I'm just asking one little thing is all that matters, because once you have one little thing, you gain the momentum for the rest of your day, because that's why most people make their bed first thing in the morning, because it's the first task they complete, and then they gain momentum to sort of do other tasks in their day. And then also, I think another thing I just want to say is that, reach out for help, and don't be afraid to, whether it's someone who's the same age as you or 20 years older than you or whoever it is, like, if you feel like you are bottling things inside of you and you just don't know who to tell, just tell someone. There's the crisis text line in America. You text START or HELP to 741-741. They have a bunch. It's all worldwide, so that the number changes worldwide, but it's still the best resources I have used in the past 5 years. And it's still up to this day. There's also, I think it's called 7cups.com, where it's pretty much like they have like peer listeners where people come on and they talk, they just ask questions and talk about their problems, and you can help them by, you don't advise them pretty much, but you pretty much just listen and just sort of allow them to let their thoughts through. So that's also another resource, but just freaking reach out, because it could save your life. You can find a mentor, you can, have your life changed forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would add to that, looking, instead of just scrolling passively on social media, look for that community of people concerned with mental health, with wellness, with staying well, with eating well, with all of that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's people doing wonderful work out there like you.
Yes. And you too.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
See you soon. And that was our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to take away some useful tips and tools to use in your own life. Don't forget to subscribe to Mind Bloom the podcast anywhere you stream your podcasts, and please leave a message on the Anchor FM voicemail if you have any questions or comments for me. Also, please leave a review on the Apple Podcasts app. That would help the podcast reach more people. That would be great. Follow Mind Bloom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at MindBloomU, and check out my website, mindbloomu.com. Don't forget, a new episode every Tuesday. I look forward to spending time with you again next week. Be well and stay blessed. Bye-bye.